Welcome to Lesson 3.2b, the first usage of the subjunctive mood. This is our first step in understanding when we use the subjunctive and when we do not. We're going to be examining two situations that require the subjunctive, these being impersonal expressions and special expressions such as tal vez, quizás, and ojalá. So the first thing we really need to wrap our heads around is the concept that there are two present tenses in Spanish. The present tense that you learn in Spanish 1 is known as the present indicative. This is your o, as, a, amos, ais, an, o, es, e, hemos, eis, en conjugation endings. These are your normal verbs, the first ones you ever start out with. The subjunctive is another way of expressing the present tense. In it has a different set of conjugations, but both indicative and subjunctive mean the same thing. They're just used in certain circumstances. So the indicative, or the Spanish 1 present tense, is used in simple sentences as well as complex sentences when code is not present. And now remember, code stands for command, opinion, doubt, and emotion. And when we have a compound sentence or a complex sentence with two different clauses, if the first half of the sentence has any of those four elements, command, opinion, doubt, or emotion, then we're required to use the subjunctive in the second half. But if they are not present, then we can use the indicative. And that's the case with the sentences that I have here as examples. A simple sentence, yo vivo en una casa. It's one clause, one verb. The only possibility is present tense. But the next sentence is complex. We have the word que joining the two sentences together. Yo vivo en una casa que está en los suburbios. So as soon as I see the word que, I have to examine that sentence a little bit more thoroughly. Does the first half of the sentence exhibit a command, an opinion, doubt, or emotion? I live in a house. None of those four elements is present by that statement. So then the second half of the sentence, está en los suburbios, remains in the indicative. Now, when we have the word que, we know we're dealing with a complex sentence. And only when we have the word que do we have the potential for using the subjunctive. The subjunctive can only occur in the second clause. It can never be in the first half of the sentence unless dealing with three specific situations, which we will addess later on. So the subjunctive is the new set of conjugations that we've learned, and they're only used in the second half of the sentence or the second clause, and they're only used when the first half of the sentence exhibits code, or command, opinion, doubt, or emotion. So let's look at these examples. Yo insisto que. Insisto is normal indicative because it's at the front half of the sentence, but the verb itself means insist. Insist is a command word, and because of that, estudiar in the second half of the sentence became estudies. Yo insisto que tú estudies para el examen. An opinionated statement would be es importante que. What's important to me may not be important to you, so those are opinion-based statements. And when we have an opinion-based statement in the front half, we have to use subjunctive in the second half, and thus we have presten for prestar. Es importante que ellos presten atención. All right, now for doubt. There's a few words that indicate doubt in Spanish, and the verb dudar is one of them. Nosotros dudamos. Now, just because the word means doubt doesn't mean it goes into subjunctive. It's at the front half of the sentence, and the front half of the sentence can never be subjunctive. But because it does mean doubt, it tells us that our verb saber in the second half has to change to the subjunctive, and saber happens to be an irregular. Nosotros dudamos que ella sepa la respuesta. All right, and the last one is emotion. If you're delighted by something, you're hoping that something happens. Well, those are emotion-based statements. So here I have me siento feliz. I feel happy. I feel excited that. Okay, well that's in the indicative because it's at the front half of the sentence, but it's an emotional statement. And because of that, my verb venir in the second half of the sentence has to go into the subjunctive. Me siento feliz que ustedes vengan a mi fiesta. All right, so we're going to start using expressions that require the subjunctive. And the reason being is the more we use these expressions, we're going to get in the habit of whenever I use it, I follow it up with the subjunctive. Whenever I write it, I follow it up with the subjunctive. Whenever I say it, I follow it up with the subjunctive. And some key statements that are generally very opinion-based are called impersonal expressions. Now, you might look at some of these and you might say they're more emotion over opinion, and that's fine, okay? But we're going to kind of lump these into the category of opinion, but they might be able to cross some of the code lines. You might consider them more commands, you might consider them more emotions, but that's okay because all in all, if they are command, opinion, doubt, or emotion, they all fall under the subjunctive umbrella. So why are these impersonal expressions? Well, impersonal expressions means that there is no specified subject. The subject is it. It's important. It's necessary. It's impossible. It's best. It's good. It's unlikely. There's not a specific subject. That's all impersonal means. But again, because these statements indicate an opinion, they are always followed up by the subjunctive mood. So let's look at the examples. Es necesario que tú traigas la computadora a clase. Es posible que yo llegue a tiempo. Es bueno que ellos escuchan al profesor. Es improbable que nosotros durmamos más de 6 horas por la noche. So after the word que, all of my verbs had to go into the subjunctive mood. Traer, llegar, escuchar, and dormir. Traer was my yogo verb, llegar, cargarzar, escuchar, a normal AR verb, and dormir, an IR stem changing verb that will also change in nosotros, vosotros. All right, so we're going to start using impersonal expressions, and we need to acclimate ourselves to always using the subjunctive after them. There are 3 expressions that kind of break the rules, if you will, when it comes to complex sentences. Tal vez, quizás, and ojalá. 2 of them indicate doubt because tal vez and quizás mean perhaps or maybe. Ojalá can kind of go into that emotion category of code because it means hopefully. Well, hopefully doesn't ensure something will happen, so there is an element of doubt there too. So we're going to say that ojalá que can be on the doubt or emotion side of our code. Regardless, because of these expressions, because they indicate doubt or emotion, we have to use subjunctive with them. Now, how do they break the rules? Tal vez and quizás do not use the word que. So they create a single clause statement that still requires a subjunctive. And now, if you recall, most of the time, 99% of the time, you must have the word que, and after it, you have the potential for subjunctive. But with tal vez and quizás and sometimes ojalá, you don't need the word que, but they are required to have the subjunctive after them, regardless. So let's look at the examples. Tal vez yo reciba una A en la clase. Quizás él te llame por teléfono esta noche. Ojalá que mis alumnos aprendan la lección. So as you can see, tal vez and quizás do not use the word que, but they require the subjunctive even though it's a single clause expression. Ojalá que, ojalá generally has the word que with it. It's not required, but most Spanish speakers will include a que, and then it's followed by the subjunctive. So, as we look at when to use the subjunctive, it's important to remember that aside from tal vez and quizás and ojalá, it can only be used in the second clause. We have to have the conjunction que, we have to have the element of code in the front half of the sentence, and when those two pieces are present, we can use the subjunctive. Tal vez and quizás generally don't have the que, but they're always required to go subjunctive. So let's see how much you retained in this lesson. See you in class.